Jack.
Levi.
The Book Club from Hell.
I'm happy this morning to have John J. Stancliff on. I just read his book, Fedbook, published in 2003. John's a pretty interesting guy. He's the Frank Gardner University Professor of Online Right-Wing Extremism at Harvard University, with a novelistic career as well. He did study novel writing as well as online extremism under Frank Gardner. He's got a second book coming out this year as well, from Farthest Heaven, which listeners to this show will know are my paymasters, and they who decide everything I do and say. But thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I will say it did come out in 2023, not 2003. I wish it came out in 2003.
2003. Yeah, I'm an idiot.
That's the lore, the iceberg, Fedbook iceberg. It came out in 2003.
Yeah. It's a very old book. It's an ancient text. It even predates Amazon KDP. But it's a really cool book. I didn't quite know what to expect going into it. So I'm an idiot, and I was aware of Fedbook for a while and held off on reading it because I just don't know why. I had it in my head that it was some sort of meme book, that it was just like a kind of like a Mike Ma but done after Mike Ma kind of book. And so I heard a bunch of people talk about it and was like, nah, it's not really for me. Until I finally picked it up, and it's just not that at all. It's so far from a meme book. It's like gothic conspiracy thriller in a kind of McCarthy Western framing narrative. And you've got everything in it you'd want in a gothic novel. You've got the framing narrative, you've got a castle, a story of guilt and absolution through death. You've got portentous dreams, you got portentous visions, portentous Tool lyrics in one scene. Got everything you'd want in a conspiracy thriller as well. You got subterfuge, extremist cells planning a mass casualty event, competing intelligence agencies. You got the chain of rebellion, all the way up to the primordial rebellion of man against God. You got everything you'd want in a McCarthy Western. Everything you wouldn't want, like punctuation. There are sections where you leave that out. It's at times a really funny book. There are all these sections, with the boys calling each other acoustic and regarded. At times it's really bleak as well. It's like really bleak. But I really liked it. Like I mentioned to you before we started recording, it's one of the few books that at the end of it I thought, if there were just another 50 pages of the boys hanging out, calling each other gay, that I'd be totally fine with that. Does that description sound about right to you? Jump in and say if you just flat out don't think it's gothic, if you just don't think it's got those Western elements or whatever.
No, I'm amazed that I'm really happy that I shouldn't say amazed. I'm really happy you picked those things out. There was sort of a template that I used for writing it. I noticed that it was kind of developing those things already, and there were some things I went back and rewrote to accommodate it even more. But the gothic thing was central to my structuring of the novel. So I'm really glad that you as a reader were able to pick it out, and thank you so much for the kind words. I am also I think that a lot of people were potentially at first put off on reading it because of the title, because of maybe the milieu out of which it arose, thinking it was just a meme book. I wanted to catch people's eyes, and it was kind of one of those things where I'd been calling it Fedbook to friends, telling them about it, oh, this is where Fedbook's at right now, and I just could not come up with a better title by the end of the work. But unfortunately, it does sort of have that sort of memey Mike Ma connotation. If you don't know anything about it, but yeah, I'm really thankful the Western and the Gothic came across in it, because that was definitely the intention.
For everyone listening, I recommend just going out and getting a copy. We'll try to keep this as spoiler free as we can. And I think there are other podcast appearances where John just lays everything out, but I'll try not to do that because there are parts of this book that you really can spoil, and I think a lot of the joy of it is getting surprised by by a lot of the plot in it. It's a plotty book, and that's not a bad thing. Some people are really averse to books being too interesting in terms of things happening, which is which is just stupid. But planning a mass casualty event, is this something you think about idly? Is this just for Fedbook?
It was just for the book. I mean, I, I don't know how to answer that. I've never planned a mass casualty event. But it's one of those things. I guess it's like probably a variant of true crime brain to some level. I did sort of grow up in a time where it seemed like it was happening all the time in the United States, and I spent a lot of time reading about some of the more I guess like mysterious ones, controversial ones like the Las Vegas shooting and things like that, and just reading parapolitical narratives online and things of that sort. But more than that, I had just this kind of conception of um, college friends being preyed upon by forces sort of higher than them, but thinking they're on top of all of it and all of their ideas are their own. And then one of them's an informant. I found that to be just kind of an amusing idea uh, by itself. And so I took that framework, sort of the buddy comedy, uh, you know, pothead college novel, and then I wanted to weave that in with some of the parapolitical stuff that I found interesting.
That combination of like buddy thriller or like those buddy cop movies and highly conspiratorial plot lines, it pairs so well because I just thought of Crowbar by Andrew Edwards, which came out fairly recently, which also puts together like just intensely conspiratorial plot lines with buddy cop kind of sensibility in the middle of it. The two go together nicely because one softens the other, but it also raises the stakes massively because you do have a lot of characters in Fedbook that you really start to care about. There's especially Godwin. When I was reading it, I had a feeling that Godwin would probably be a favorite of a lot of people. It's like kind of goofy, quite unsettling former special forces guy. Like he has that real former special forces vibe where they just seem. Well, I mean, I guess they're the sort of people who signed up for like, well, I'm going to kill people for a living.
Mm-hmm.
And you captured that really well. But yeah, are you aware of other books or I guess films or anything like that where the buddy cop and the conspiracy thriller are put together? Because it seems like an obvious combination now that I've read a few books which put that together.
Yeah, I actually talked about this with Andy on his podcast a long time ago. And shout out to Andrew Edwards. He's one of the best independent authors working. Crowbar is amazing. Crowbar is like Fedbook for adults. That's how it felt when I was reading it. I was like, oh my! I was like, it's so terrifying. It's one of the scariest books I've ever read. It's
Yeah.
it's insanely, yeah. I mean, like you said, it raises the stakes. But anyway, I talked with Andrew Edwards about this because he asked me a similar question a long time ago. Sorry, I already shouted him out, but he read Fedbook when I like nobody else had. I literally DM'd him. I was like, "Hey, I love King of Dogs. Can I send you my book?" And he was like, "Sure." And then he read it and he really liked it. He's a great guy, great writer. Anyway, he asked me a similar question. I told him, Philip K. Dick's The Scanner Darkly is basically the most. That was like the most direct inspiration, stylistically, that I had for that sort of thing. And that's it's very similar. In that case, it's drugs. They're dealing drugs, and one of them is an informant, but he doesn't know he's an informant because the drugs like making him lose his memory. So it has that memory, that sci-fi like memory angle. Substance death like literally splits your brain in two. So he goes to the station and he's working as an informant and he sees himself on the camera and he's trying to figure out who that is that he's looking at. They think it's like the secret link in the Substance D um, chain of sales, and he's not able to put two and two together that he's the missing link. But anyway, it's all throughout. It's very funny. It's a black comedy, and it's also very bleak. I was very inspired by that book. I thought it was great. It spoke to me with some of my own friendships back when I was younger. And there's also Demons by Fyodor Dostoevsky, which was also a big influence. Um, where I think there's Ivan Shatov, who he's not really an informant, but there's this question among the nihilist cell in that book of whether he will inform, and he ends up being killed in the novel. And it's not really, they're not like really buddies. They all kind of hate each other in Demons. Uh, but it's the same sort of dynamic. There's like three or four guys. They meet up and they have discussions that on their face seem to be about ideology, but really they're just about personalities. Um, and that book's really good for that, about psychologizing extremism. But it's not as funny. It's not really about friendship, and neither is A Scanner Darkly. Really, what I the difference the thing that I think my book does is my muse really was friendship in the book. I think that's the most important thematic part of Fedbook, because these people are doing dumb things together. They're potentially evil things, but I don't want to say it's not justified necessarily, but it really was about the friends we made along the way, sort of deal.
Yeah.
That's kind of the message one should take from Fedbook.
Yeah, well, I guess that's the thing with the friendship angle. Because, yeah, like, without spoiling anything, because people will work this out within the first 50 pages of the book, you got let's just say he's the main character for now, Soldier Crane, who works for a private domestic intelligence agency in the United States, which doesn't officially exist, where he's an informant in extremist groups, or just groups that the government's worried about. And he's put into a group, or he's sent to Tannerite in Wyoming to infiltrate a group called WEPT. I think it's the Wyoming Empty Planet Triumvirate.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the setup. And he finds a cell and gets to be really good friends with it. Like he embeds very well, really as well as you could want. And you saying that the friendships don't justify what they're doing, because they are planning a mass casualty attack on a university, which kind of morphs along the way. But that was the original thought. And it's almost from inside the cell, or from inside those friendships, things feel justified more or less by the fact that people you care about are also getting passionate about these things. You're egging each other on when they're getting drunk or high together. So there's that, not a justification that would make sense to anyone outside of that friendship, but within the friendship, it does start to make sense. And then it's all complicated by the fact that, Crane is just there to inform on everyone. Right. Inform on them and egg them on, and encourage them to commit crimes.
Yes. Yeah, his role is pretty complicated. That was like that was the narrative hook. I wrote that first part where he has the terrible assignment in the Southwest, and then he, following the ridiculous, like, bureaucratic structures of the Rental Informants Union of America, ends up being accidentally placed in a group that he shouldn't be placed in because it violates his contract. I felt like that was like a good narrative hook,
Hmm.
and he wants to he wants to just get out, but he likes the people a little bit too much to just get out.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, that does make me think of something. When you were talking about writing that first act in when he goes to those drug addled, I guess they're shamans almost.
Mhm.
Like that's the group he's asked to inform on. When I was reading that, I thought I had the book picked as it was going to almost be episodic. Like he'd be put into these various different groups and have his mind bent in different ways. The tone was really comedic. Like the initial part was really funny, and I thought the rest of the book would be like that, but it changes quite a lot. Never suddenly and never in a jarring way, but once you finish the book, if you look back to the start, you realize that you've gone quite a distance, not just in terms of events and things that have happened, but in terms of tone, in terms of the number of different writing styles you employ as well. So when you started writing the book, both did you know where it was going to end up, or were you just flying by the seat of your pants? And I really don't mean this as a backhanded compliment or anything. This is not critical, but how many times did you go back and edit, particularly the plot? Because it or was it written over a really long period? Because there are a bunch of tonal changes, subtle changes in focus, threads picked up, not totally resolved, and so on. The sort of things that normally would detract from my enjoyment of a book, but in the case of Fedbook, I like it. I'm not quite sure how you managed to make that work. There are a lot of things here that probably an editor would tell you not to do, but fortunately, either you didn't get an editor or you just ignored what your editor told you. How how was this book written? Is I guess the overall question here.
Well, yeah. So the first part was like going to be this sci-fi novella set in the far future. Not the far future, the opposite, like pretty near future. And I think I did kind of have an idea sort of in mind, like what you were talking about. He's going to join all these different groups, and I maybe had first it's going to be like the drug users, then it's going to be like it's going to be these college students at a university, and it's going to be this parody, and then eventually he's like infiltrating the government itself, like blah blah blah. And then I let it the first part where it's just a little short story basically about um the Apache Pueblo Remnant Alliance, and doing the vision quest on acid in the desert. I had that
Mhm.
part, and then I sat on it for a really long time, and I had this, a few months later. I was writing other things in the meanwhile, short stories and such. One day at work, I worked at a car dealership at the time, which makes an appearance in the
Mhm.
book.
Yeah.
um, I worked at a car dealership at the time. I had this flash of inspiration. It was during COVID, and we weren't having a lot of people come in for obvious reasons. I just started writing all this huge outline on a sheet of paper. It was something that kind of resembled Fedbook, but wasn't quite there yet. And I was like, I don't know if I really want to write this. It was something more serious. It was more like the Demons by Dostoevsky. It was a little bit like too close to home, I would say. And I let that sit for a little bit, and then after a couple weeks, I revisited my writing folder on my computer. I found that the Apache Pueblo Remnant Alliance short story, and I was like, what if I just like combine the two? What if I made one of the guys that was in this group of friends on this outline that I wrote? What if I made him like an informant? Um, and I felt like that was kind of a brilliant idea, and it's sort of started this thing that I do now. Whenever I'm trying to come up with an idea, I find that I can have one that idea that's kind of good, but there's just something not ready yet. That if I have another idea that I've sat on for a while, I can just kind of mash the two of them together, and no matter if it doesn't seem like they're going to work all the way, you can usually get something really interesting out of it. And a bunch of my short stories and longer works, like Pierce is sort of like that. My forthcoming novel with Farthest Heaven. But anyway, yes, so the reason it all works together, because it was written over a period of about 2 years. Um, and I was sort of, yeah, I had done a lot of writing before that, but it's a different thing to be writing short stories every couple months. Um, there is a short-lived quarterly magazine on Slash Lit called the Lit Quarterly. Some people might remember it. I published a short story with them. Um, I'd written the longest thing I'd ever written was just 10,000 words, just before starting Fedbook. So I was still like sort of a novice at that point, and like going into writing a novel is something that you're going to get a lot better at writing as you go on. And so by the time I finished it, I realized there's all these. It's hard to ignore these like tonal things. And I think the first draft was probably much worse, but it benefited from having a couple of people help me along the way. And like you said, there was some stuff I just ignored from them. Like, I like this scene a lot. I'm going to keep it in, that kind of thing. Um, Even if it was perhaps a little bit zany. I'm thinking of, when Soldier has the appointment at the car dealership, and there's the little one act play right before that he gets accused of being an informant.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up.
Yeah, I mean, I just had a lot of fun writing it, and I didn't really let and it's overindulgent and all those kinds of things. But when I finished it, Act 3 is a lot more. It's the most focused part. Uh, it's the most disciplined part. I had to make sure, and it was only accomplished by reading it like 6 or 7 times and going back and dramatically editing stuff, that I was able to even closely bind the entire thing together. Plot wise, though, I would say once I got to about the 20,000 word mark, I knew where it was going to end. There's details that I needed to work out along the way, but I extensively outline. I'm an outline writer. Um, I got a notebook full of uh, Fedbook notes, how to make the plot work, what other characters are doing in the background.
Yeah, that would make sense, particularly in terms of the who knows what at which time aspects of the plot.
Yeah,
That you're mapping that out pretty closely, because that's the sort of thing that if you writing it get it wrong, like the reader is going to pick up on it immediately, and it's just going to ruin the whole book. Yeah, I think actually now that I say it out loud, now that I listen to you, in terms of sort of the trajectory of the book, starting out quite funny and almost diffuse in terms of just formally diffuse. You're using all of these different writing styles, like the one act play. You got the framing narrative, which is going the whole way, but things are much more diffuse like that, and then narrowing down towards the end of the book, where it gets a lot more serious, a lot bleaker, and the pace picks up more and more and more, and it gets formally more uniform. That's were you trying to write it that way as almost a way to intensify things? Because that works really well. That was a really, really effective use of I guess a bunch of techniques that I haven't seen done that much.
Yeah, I guess like I was, kind of like you said, and I appreciate you saying this. You enjoy being in the sort of slice of life part of the book, and I enjoyed writing those parts. There's also a lot of point A to point B things like, well, this needs to happen because this character knows this. I need to figure out how to get him there. And a lot of that was like, well, who's he got to see today, kind of thing. But once, and I wrote through a lot of, like, a lot of it was outlined, but I wrote through a lot of it. yeah, once all the pieces were in place, and like it's hard to talk about it without spoiling it, but
Yeah.
there's a very main character. There's a main character towards the end of the book, who readers will know, who is, he's a bit frightening, very important. He sets basically the entire stakes of the novel, right at the beginning of part three. Once I knew who he was and how he related to everyone else, I had a concept of him from, he's mentioned in the first chapter, and I knew he was going to be in the book. I knew what he was going to represent. I just needed to figure out how to make him believable and how to integrate him into the plot. Once I had that figured out, it was yeah, down to nuts and bolts, and like time for the climax to happen. Um, Everything is kind of just about getting to meet him. In terms of the story, that's most of Soldier Crane's motivation, because he's there. And the only way for him to get out is to basically accomplish his mission, which his mission is to figure out who's all in the cell and observe and report on them. And there's one guy who it takes him a really long time to find. And yeah, once he's found, unfortunately, the events are set in motion. Um, and so for the climax, yeah, all there was to do was write the action, so to speak.
Yeah, in terms of writing that action, and also just familiarity with extremist groups, with the intelligence agencies who sponsor them, uh, had you, like, how much research had you had to do into that, or have you had personal experience, like combat experience? Because the action scenes, coming from someone who has no combat experience, they feel very real. They feel very believable. And even the stuff about it's like, it's not. I don't think it's spoiling much in something called Fedbook to say that, like, all of the extremist groups you come across are just like being paid for by some other domestic intelligence agency. There's sort of like almost a very black comedy of errors where all of these groups are bumbling into each other. But how did you research this or get so acquainted with it, or did you just completely make it up and you're good at at pretending that you know what you're talking about?
Yeah, with the action sequences, I guess I'm good at writing about it because I have no combat experience. I'm not a veteran. You know, I've watched maybe more than average material on war. I don't know. And like what it's like to be in a gunfight, because I find it interesting, but I've definitely not ever been in a gunfight. Um, and as far as the extremist thing, I think lamentably I've just been sort of interested in that for a long time, and I grew up as an internet native, so you just run into a lot of people like that, and there's sort of a replicable psychology at play. I think that was one reason I wrote the book, was just to kind of create the type of like sick mind, that you'd find on the internet a lot. They exist in real life, and I've met some of them in real life, and I think the thing that's really interesting is you can have a person who's had a really great upbringing, not really wanting for anything vital, and they can still have this part of them that just needs to be excited, and they need more. It's not like I tried to really get that across. It's not like the motivation for the protagonist in Fedbook is not resentment necessarily. A little bit but it's resentment towards being bored. It's resentment for not having something, not having like some suffering asked of them. And then there's also this like self-reinforcing um, volatility of inherent to manhood, that they egg each other on to you know say more volatile things or behave in a more extreme way. And that's kind of how Soldier ends up getting in close with them, is by doing that. Um, Yeah, I hope that's a good answer. In other words, I did just make it all up, but it's kind of like an observational thing. I've never been in a group like this. Um, I've never committed any violent acts, etc.
That's good. I'll pass all of those things on to my CIA paymasters. Yeah, it is interesting you talking about soldiers. You know, not quite resentment. He's got that bored apathy to him, and he's not totally apathetic. He really cares about particularly the people in his cell whom he encourages to go shoot up a university. But I find Fedbook is a pretty interesting examination of different types of disaffection, and a particularly male, probably definitely Western male search for meaning, particularly through violence or brotherhood oriented towards some sort of violent act. It's probably the case for other cultures as well, because if you've got people like Soldier who he signs up to this domestic intelligence agency because he needed work, but also that he was just so bored by the idea of having a normal job. And then later in the book, he needs to stay alive. He doesn't wholly disagree with the goals of the cell he's embedded in. You've got someone like Godwin, this ex army ranger who misses fighting and the brotherhood of fighting, and a lot of his disaffection comes from not having that. You've got someone like Roger, who's very godly, and initially non-violent, but he starts edging in that direction. Maybe just because he feels like the world is so bad, and that there's only one way to fix it. You've got someone like Paul is really interesting. His unsettlingly easygoing apathy. He was the character that I thought was most likely to snap and just do something completely wild. But that's his disaffection, that he keeps referencing Taoist philosophy and stuff and saying, "Oh, you got to be like water." Then you've got someone like Joseph Marlowe, who he seems very motivated by imposing his will on others. That's his reaction to, I guess, a void of meaning. And then of all of these characters, I mean, we can name him. I didn't read Elijah as disaffected. He seems to have a purpose and a role. Like he's not existing in a vacuum,
Right.
and is not having to. That's not his problem. But do you think all times and places produce disaffected men, like all of those men in Fedbook, who are looking to violence in one way or another as some sort of way to force the intensity and bring meaning into their lives? Or are certain situations more amenable to this than others?
Yeah, that's a pretty good question. I definitely think it's something that is is probably part of all men. If it's not, I don't inhabit all men, obviously, but um,
No, I'm actually asking you as an avatar of all men, and I
yeah,
expect
yeah.
the answer to come from that perspective.
I as a generalization, yes, I think men are literally that's what they're made for. But we're lucky or blessed enough to live in a civilization where we can have a we can still struggle, but it's in a more restrained manner. Um, not not to say that perhaps violent struggle can't be for anything good. I definitely think that's the case, but um, in the right circumstances. But I think it is part of all men that they want to. There is this like and Cormac McCarthy was a big influence on the book. There is this like when Cormac McCarthy writes the judges saying that war is the ultimate game, and it's the only way to actually what's the exact quote to force the unification of existence. I think uh, that's true. Like all boys know that they grow up like as soon as they like can hold a stick. They fashion the stick into a weapon. It's something that's pretty crazy to see. Um, and they play with it as a weapon, and they pretend to hurt each other with them. Uh, I think it does give men meaning, but we have a civilization which exists because men have that meaning, but also because men know that that's sort of like a terrible aspect of themselves. It's like a beast that has to be restrained except for in emergencies. And I think something that is interesting about the modern era is, being able to sit in a nice home that's got environmental controls and running water, um, and to have a vehicle and things like this, is to be able to read about it, to be self-conscious of that, and to know it. And I think that's a difficulty of the modern era, is to be overly self-conscious of that aspect of yourself, particularly when you're in your early 20s, and you don't necessarily see a life of righteous struggle ahead of you. You either see menial, boring, uh increasingly low reward struggle, low like remunerate. That's not even a word. You don't
I
get
think it
very much
is.
money from it. You don't get very much money from it anymore, it seems like. Um, you don't get prestige. It's just hard, and character building only gets you so far. Or or the struggle is extra legal, and you lose the benefits of that civilization. And I think it's easy for a very young man to start flirting with, well, the civilization is offering me nothing in the form of righteous struggle. Maybe being an outlaw in this civilization is actually a good thing. I think that pops up at various times and places, but I think it's a I think it's in our time. it's very it's very relevant. There's a lot of things going on in our time. I've already mentioned the financial aspect. A lot of people have different opinions on this. Um, you know, but there's also the spiritual and technological aspect of it. Basically, I've grown up with the internet my whole life. There's the computer is ever present. The computer is always interesting. There's always something going on in it. You kind of get used to um, this feeling of like being titillated all the time. I remember I have a good friend who I talked to a lot through the writing of this book, and we were kind of fascinated with this concept of just like permanent stimulation, not necessarily like pornography or like violent movies or anything like that, but just titillation through exposure to ideas. Like you know pine tree Twitter or slash poll, things that
Mhm.
you're not allowed to talk about in school. Um, I think it's easy to look at your civilization where it just seems like maybe there's not so many options, and then look at the breadth of to just be constantly exposed to the breadth of ideology on the internet, and yeah, like I said earlier, start to wonder about maybe being an outlaw as a virtue. And I'll say right now, I don't think that. That's why I wrote the book, though. I wanted to explore that idea. It was very long-winded. Hopefully, it made sense.
No, that was good. I have you on so that you can talk. Like, go for as long as you want. Get as discursive as you want. I think a lot of the best bits of Fedbook are when you're getting really discursive.
Oh, I'm glad you think so.
Okay.
They're the parts I'm most embarrassed about, probably.
Nah, I think self indulgence. It's why I really like. I guess you like. I dislike the term, but independent literature. I guess like 4chan lit and lit adjacent literature. It's if either people who've been using the website directly, or one or two steps removed. They know someone who knows someone who wasted their time on writing general or whatever. This self-indulgence of them is one of the best bits of those books to come out of those circles. when someone really cares about what they're doing, when they're very passionate about it, when they're obviously having fun writing it, or it's in some way gratifying, that self indulgence is just so fun. It's so good. So look, maybe I'm abnormal in wanting that, but it does feel really missing from more I guess more sterile books that come out. Books that don't feel like you can't see like the author's fingerprints all over them, or like grease smudges on the pages. There's that sort of messiness that is wonderful. Anyway, long way of saying, be as discursive as you want. It's what I really like and want more of.
Got it.
Especially now that we can, with LLMs, we can automate sterility so effectively. We don't need more snappy sterility in the world.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, I think about that a lot. I mean, yeah, it's one of the being able to write something messy, whether it's a plot or just like a paragraph, is a real it will set you apart as a writer. Um, Maybe no one will read what you write, but it'll set you apart. Like people will know you're not a computer at least.
Yeah, I feel like I don't know. Maybe I'm too black pilled on this. I just don't feel like people are really reading full stop, or at least like okay when it comes to rage bait slop like the trillionth article on here's what women really think. We certainly have a surplus of those, probably an oversupply. But in terms of fiction, I don't know how much of that is actually being read or not. I do intentionally not engage with discussions of that because I feel like it'd just be too dispiriting.
Yeah, it it's something I've thought about a lot. I go back and forth on it. Like I use it. The thing that makes me second guess myself about the black pill aspect of it is, I guess when I get black pilled about it, I usually use it as like I don't know. I'm not saying you or other people do this. I just noticed with myself, it's like kind of a coping mechanism for
Mm.
not being willing to put in the time to make the product as good as I can. Because it's like, well, it's just going to be this particular work is mainly geared like the people I know who are going to read it are going to read it. It's not going to reach a wider audience. It's not, people don't read it anymore anyway. It's it's whatever. But on the same token, like there are statistically more people there's more readers than ever before. I don't think the quality of
Mm.
reading is higher, but there's the market for books. I should you have to qualify everything. I don't think print media is not necessarily doing well, but ebooks are doing really well. I know people read a lot of like really trash genre fiction on the Kindle marketplace. I know
Hmm.
I've met people who surprisingly do that. I worked with a guy on a construction site who would like, you know, he would read like Star Wars fan fiction at lunch, and I'd see him on his phone like with these walls of text. I'm like, hey, what are you reading, man? I thought, he's another serious reader. And he's like, oh, this is like Game of Thrones, Star Wars fan fiction. I'm like, what are you talking about? And he would listen to like lit RPGs on Audible. Um, so those type of people are out there, and they're not the people you'd think that are listening to it or reading it. Now, that is kind of a black pill in itself. Um, if that's the kind of like popular literature that's out there. But I did read like one of the few pieces I think that was worth anything on Substack that I read recently was about how, you know, I won't go too much into the details of it because I don't remember all of it, but the main thesis of it was, because it appears that like literary fiction is not as popular anymore. People are saying like, oh, it's because we don't have a literary society anymore. People don't read anything anymore. And he pointed out the data that shows that that's not true. There's plenty of readers still. What he said was like literary fiction as a form is basically going extinct. Which I think people should take kind of as, I think that to me, that's sort of encouraging. It allows you to have more freedom with what you write. Like Fedbook is certainly, I would describe it as literary to some level, but it's also a work of genre. It blends the two, and I think a lot of like the great works, the works that I respect, are both. Like A
Mm.
Scanner Darkly is a perfect example. Philip K. Dick was a kind of pulpy sci-fi writer, but remembered as being, the most literary of them. Cormac McCarthy is most remembered for his westerns, even though they're very literary. Um, so there's that sort of thing going on. I think people tend to want to read tend to want to consume slop, um, but you can sneak some gems in the slop, I guess.
Yeah, it's like feeding your dog a worming tablet. Or you wrap it up in a piece of ham. try
Yeah,
try
yeah,
to
exactly.
not
That's
let
what
him
you're
spit it out.
gonna do. Yes, you have to be the worming tablet of literature.
Yeah, that's what Fedbook is, and what your upcoming novel is too. Your upcoming novels, for the people who tried reading Fedbook and spat out the worming tablet when you started having characters debate like the validity of Christian violence with one another.
Yeah, you get Pierce, which is much more straightforward.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I mean,
it's
look, I really look forward to it. I mean, part of me was hoping that your next book would just be even more, even more discursive and even with an even broader focus. But if it has the focus, particularly the last parts of Fedbook, I'd also be very happy with that.
oh yeah. If your favorite part of Fedbook was the the part three, I mean, you will be extremely satisfied with Pierce. If you liked the long interweaving storyline that wraps up in a bow over a long time, you're going to really enjoy Pierce. If you if you enjoyed the discursive stuff, you're not going to enjoy Pierce as much, unfortunately. But yeah, I won't spoil too much about it. Um, but yeah, it's different. A lot of it, frankly, a lot of it was written. It was to test myself, kind of, in reaction to things that I found to be maybe weaknesses of Fedbook, or things that I felt were maybe just I don't know, maybe too juvenile or something like that. Um, Pierce is more, it's more grounded, but not in a way that detracts, I don't think.
Mm,
So
mm. How much? So in Pierce, I guess the cosmic aspects of Fedbook, because the stakes are really raised to a to a cosmic level. You know, there's this state of young men being perpetually drawn to violence, and this sense that perhaps this state of affairs has a direction. To increasing anarchy and strife, ended by some characters talk about a coming emperor. It felt like the coming of the Antichrist, actually, that certain important characters were working to try to forestall. Is that level of stakes coming over into Pierced?
in my opinion, yes. In the reader's opinion, no. Probably, if I had to guess, probably not. But in my opinion, yeah. I think it's a. I mean, Pierce is a book about like a patrilineal, um, quote unquote, dynasty, I guess. And so the cosmic stakes here are a father and his son. And so I don't want to give too much away. Probably already did.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But that is, to me, like being a father and being a son are, in a real material provable way, a way you don't have to imagine, are the most, or discourse about. It's the most cosmic relationship a man can have, knowing nothing, ha- having no interiority, um, just existing, if that makes sense. Uh, yeah.
It is interesting seeing. Wait, so was Fedbook written when you had like when you had kids, or was this written before it? Because I do find it really interesting seeing how people's writing changes from not being a parent to being a parent, just because it is such a fundamental shift, or just a shift that reveals the stakes of being alive so clearly in a way you really can't escape.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, to answer your question, like I've been sitting on the manuscript for Fedbook for a while. Finished multiple rounds of editing. I've just been kind of lazy about getting it formatted and submittable to KDP. And then, lo and behold, my wife is like 39 weeks pregnant. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm about to have a kid. I need to release this book. And I published
Yep.
it on Amazon just a few days before he was born. So I really like procrastinated. I kind of was like, I had submitted it to some people. I was sort of waiting to hear back on things, and I just was like, you know what, I'm just gonna do it myself. I'll be happy if it sells 10 copies that aren't friends and family. Um, I gotta get it off my plate now. And so that's pretty much what I did. And then yeah, after I had my son, like I started, I read the Old Testament that same year, like for the first time in its entirety.
Or the whole thing.
Yeah, there's some minor prophets that I skipped, to be honest. But other than that,
No,
yes.
it's more if you make it over the Leviticus roadblock.
Yeah, I was
It's
extremely annoyed that I wasn't able to just slog through that in previous attempts, and I did get past it this time. And like I did read the words. I don't know how much of the like
yeah.
chronology
Can
actually
you
made it in
recite the
my head.
genealogies?
Yeah, 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 exactly. But the whole thing is like it's a very impactful story of fathers and sons over many many generations, and that doesn't go the way you would think it goes. In pretty much every significant father and son relationship in the uh, in the book. I think Genesis is like as far as like my late 20s go. Genesis. I mean, maybe it sounds silly, but I think it's probably like the most influential single book to me. Um, and it has that. That's a cosmic book. I mean, speaking of cosmic books or
Mm. Yep.
cosmic themes, like as cosmic as it gets, and not just because it's the creation of the earth and the universe and everything. Um, but there's cataclysms, there's floods, there's rape, genocide, uh, great battles, slavery, humiliations. Like one thing, for example, Abraham. Everybody knows Abraham and the Binding of Isaac story, but they don't. Like, I remember reading it, and there's a part where Abraham, when before he's Abraham, while he's still Abram, has to go through this kingdom, and he. This is discursive. I don't know what this has to do with anything. He has to
No,
go.
go
He
for
has
it.
to go.
Go for it.
He has to go through this kingdom for something, and he's really worried that the king is going to like kill him because he desires Sarai so much, and so he just
Oh, I remember
pretends
this
his
bit.
wife is his sister,
Yeah,
and the
I
way
remember
the
this.
king the king takes her and then gives her back and then sends
Doesn't
him
he
on
do
his
that
way.
twice? Actually, like
I
he
think he
just
does it
keeps
multiple.
doing that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he does it multiple times. Um, yeah, Abraham's a fascinating individual, and also like pretty like that story is like fear and trembling, very very influential to me. Like I read it a very long
Hmm.
time ago, um, but the idea of a man living for so long with basically just one hope, and reducing himself to total humiliation, and then eventually securing like victory near the end of his life. I don't know if I want to say it's inspiring, but like there's something about there's something true in it that you can You can tell it's a divine story. I remember there's a little essay of criticism Ezra Pound did on Genesis, where he's talking about the Jacob and Esau story. He's saying you know it's divine because no human who's ever been born ever would conceive of Jacob obtaining the birthright after everything being justice, unless you were
Yeah.
like a sovereign who determined that was, Jacob is the you basically have to be divine and like say this gross miscarriage of justice is actually like that's the Jacob is the one who gets the blessing despite all of his chicanery and deceit. That stuck with me
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
So yeah, I think being a father like influenced my decision to read that. And then yeah, I won't go too much. I won't talk too much more about that. But yeah, Genesis is great. Being a father is great. It's extremely important. It's like everything that's important in life is sort of wrapped up in that to me.
Yeah, there's a. I mean, I guess between you and the first human, however wherever you draw the line, there is an unbroken chain of parenthood, and there's something very special about not being the edge of that anymore. You're within that chain.
Yeah, yeah, it's true. And someday you'll just be you know you'll be another chain a long ways back, and someone a long time from now will be thinking of you, even if they don't know who you are. It's crazy to think about.
Yeah, it's I mean, I guess that is when we were talking earlier about that male compulsion to violence and how civilization. Maybe civilization just is the exists to provide people with different ways to resolve disputes than violence. And the more civilized, the firmer and more easily accessible are those different ways to settle things. We actually didn't mention how fatherhood is also a pretty good way to at least discourage that nihilistic or rootless violence that basically everyone in Fedbook, or almost all the characters, again with maybe the exception of Elijah, is contending with that desire to fill a void. It also lends, I guess, that desire to fill a void also lends itself to being manipulated by greater powers pretty easily. And even in trying to resist those powers, I guess violently, one is just more deeply controlled by them. Is that really no one in Fedbook who takes part in the crusade, which is I guess on one level, the action to that mass casualty event against the university is gets anything meaningful out of it. I'm trying to think of the actual question here. Okay, how about what would resistance to these controlling powers that prey on people's I guess drive to violence or drive to find some meaning in violence? What would that resistance look like? Would it be there's a part of the book where some of the characters see a church procession and they just didn't realize that this sort of thing happened in Tannerite, and they're really struck for it. Would that be meaningful resistance or uncontrolled resistance? Such a thing even possible?
Yeah, I mean, this is another question that I was trying to answer with Fedbook, and I think I'll be honest. Like, I don't know if I actually satisfactorily um, answered the question. Um, I remember I had a discussion the other night with some friends about it. It sort of went over like a lead balloon, and it made people raise their eyebrows at me. But it was about a mutual friend who is not a violent person, but kind of like sort of like a hikikomori type. Uh,
Mm.
Goes to work, comes home, plays like Overwatch, uh, does some drugs, is sort of a wastrel outside of his, food service job. But he's a little younger, I was sort of like, at the end of the day, if unless you have, and I don't think this is a good thing. I think unless you adopt this extremely popular coping mechanism, and this isn't how I live my life, but unless you adopt this extremely popular coping mechanism that of self improvement for its own sake, which a lot of people cannot believe, and it's very difficult for them to believe that it's worth it to just improve themselves um, to an endless degree for no other reason than that they should do it, or like I guess it like feels good um, because it's hard if you do it right. And I think there is value in that. I think there is a lot of value in exerting yourself and struggling, but like to do it for yourself and for yourself alone, I think is a cope that a lot of people take, and they speak about it very plainly, like you have to love yourself, you have to blah blah blah. I think a 24-year-old man is like, he knows his place. He knows people don't really like think twice when they see him pass by at his work. He's just another guy. I think he's internalized this. But what does he really owe the world in a vacuum? Like, he doesn't owe the world self-improvement. He has to at some point for his own health realize that he owes something to himself by virtue of existing to improve. Now, to get back to your original question, like, what does resistance actually look like? It's difficult to be like, yeah, resistance is, going to a church. I don't really think that's the point of church. It's sort of like, if I was to say that about faith, I think it would, I mean, it's just kind of reductive. Like, I don't want to preach to people either. Kind of like, I'll just say that, like, there are real things out there that are more important than you, that are worth struggling for. And it's very obvious when you have a family that that's worth struggling for. But to, become the type of man that is worth raising a family is something that's extremely difficult. And the point I was making is like, it's not immediately, the point I was making with my friends that night was like, it's not immediately obvious to a normal sort of wastrel, like 23-year-old man, like, who's single and wants to play video games and smoke weed, like, that he should do anything um to improve his situation, because there's no like, it's easy to, I don't know. I don't know. It's just like, I don't believe that people should live that way, but I don't think people should kid themselves that nothing is offered as an external source of meaning to young men. I like, and maybe that's how it's always been. I don't know. And maybe all young men go through this eventually, is like, nothing is offered. I'm going to go, through my dark night of the soul, 23 to 24, and then eventually I'm going to figure it out. Um, whatever, in whatever way that means, hopefully it's in a good way. But like, why shouldn't a 23-year-old just like be on welfare and like play video games if he has nothing else going on? Like, he doesn't owe this civilization anything, and the civilization has made it clear it doesn't want necessarily anything for him either. So that's sort of my long-winded thought on it. I don't know what resistance looks like. I don't like, resistance kind of sounds cowardly too, and my suspicion about resistance would be that in the end it'll be corrupted by this drive for self-improvement, like self-aggrandizement. It wouldn't be
Hmm.
for, and I think that's something that's talked about a little bit in the book, is it just be mainly to make yourself excited and to feel large, um, if that makes sense. So yeah, that those are my thoughts.
Yeah, is it the feeling large? Going back to what you were saying about constant titillation, it could just become another form of entertainment,
Yeah, yeah, 100%.
which itself is a form of distraction. So you're just kind of like spinning around in circles.
Hmm.
Actually, one thing I was interested in reading this book. So, because everyone's in these underground cells, they're all using aliases with one another. How much should we be reading into the characters' aliases? So, for example, one of the cells is the Crusader cell, and everyone's named after various Crusaders. And I was expecting a lot more internecine struggle between the Crusaders, like Tancred and Baldwin. Um, and then without spoiling too much, with Elijah as well, how much should we be reading to him as the prophet who resisted King Ahab's worship of Baal, and the one who's to return as the harbinger of the Messiah. How much are you wanting people to read into the meaning behind these aliases, and how much of it was, like mostly boys, some men in one of the cells getting names that they think are cool, and I guess doing so in an ironic way, looking at sort of the ridiculousness of that self-aggrandizement that you mentioned before, like trying to find meaning, trying to self-improve, but it ending up just being another form of distraction.
Well, I can say you should read into the fact that they sound cool and auspicious.
Mm.
That was half of it. um, the other half was, I guess, from the like Christian perspective, the particular temptation of a very violent man um, being named after a prophet, like a biblical prophet. Um, for the I just found it I found it compelling. Like, okay, I'm a Christian. This I'm going to call like the most evil guy in the organization after a prophet, just to kind of like raise the stakes and make the moral question of the book that much more confusing. And it's a through line through the entire thing, like the question of Christian violence. And in the end, like, we can't spoil it, but in the end, like,
I mean, you can if you want. It's
uh
your book.
yeah, I mean, like, Elijah's certainly not a Christian. But kind of like you said about uh there's this, yeah, like the being a harbinger of the return of the Messiah is like, that was very deliberate. Like, that's why I chose the name for him. Um and then as for like all the other like minor characters in the book, like the minor, like Tenskwatawa, those are like historical, like false prophets. So it's supposed to kind of
Mm.
relax the intensity of the like biblical cosmic question a little bit. These are more these are more, embodied. These guys have red blood flowing through their veins. They're guys that this Elijah character picked up somewhere, who want to kill people and want to do it for a job. Um, Tenskwatawa, Savonarola, Van Leyden, and such. Um, and then Constantine was similar. I thought Constantine he's a Christian saint, and he's held in Christian tradition. He's considered equal to the apostles. He's also a very very violent man. Had a violent career as emperor, not just because he was the first emperor to have unitary authority over the entire empire for the first time in, like, I think a century, but also the way he put down rebellions, specifically within the Christian faith. He used violence to settle disputes um, on numerous occasions, and he had a deathbed baptism. Um, so I thought he was an interesting historical figure. Um, cool name. Let's
Yeah, the
make
cool name. You
let's
can't
the cool
understate
rule
that.
of cool is
You can't
real.
undervalue that. Yeah,
Yeah, it's a real thing. So, what was the second? Was there a second part to that question?
I can't even remember.
Okay.
You just go off if you want.
No,
What
no,
about this actually?
that's all.
Because you brought it up. Here's a really easy question. Do you think like a meaningfully Christian violence can exist? Because that is, like you said, that's something that comes up a lot in this book. And it's not resolved. It's up in the air.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I was maybe like at the end of the day, like unable to answer the question. Really, of like there have been Christian wars of defense, which I think are completely justified. I think extra legal violence is pretty much always unjustified um, for Christians, no matter how brutal the authority you labor under. I think if you come to Christianity expecting like a justification to do to wage war against Baal worshippers or Moloch worshippers, if that's who you believe like run our government, it might even be the case that they are. I don't think that's what Jesus Christ calls you to do as a Christian. Um, I don't. There are no like terrorist saints, in our tradition. So
Yeah.
you can just
Yeah.
kind of like look at the lives of the saints, and it'll humble you in that regard 100% because they're laboring under brutal pagans, and gladly get their head cut off um, for being a Christian. So they weren't going out and terrorizing the you know you believe as a Christian that God appointed the rulers that you have. So like they rule over you for a reason. Even if you who are insignificant can't really understand it, God has them there for a reason. It's a power. It's a power that exists without a body. Um, to some level, states and governments are celestial authorities um, appointed by God to do something. It's not for us to necessarily understand that. That's what I believe. And there's some of that in Fedbook.
Mm, mm. Oh, there's more than some of that in Fedbook. It feels like the background of a lot of what's going on.
Yeah.
One way, actually, one way that it comes up quite often, I mean, in things like, the names of various people. One way in which it also comes up with is there are sections of dialogue where two characters will just be having some sort of philosophical or theological argument. It's actually kind of interesting how you approach dialogue in this book. I was wanting to ask about it because you've got at least three registers of dialogue. You've got one in the framing narrative, which is a bit less naturalistic. Um, you've got those McCarthyisms. It feels a bit Old Testament inflected, but non-argumentative. Then you've got this within the central plot, another less naturalistic register, but quite argumentative, where you have two characters just setting their positions and arguing with each other. And then finally, probably my favorite, you've got the very naturalistic dialogue in the central plot where the boys are just calling each other gay and retarded. And those are probably the most fun bits of dialogue. But how are you approaching writing dialogue? Are you the sort of person who can just sit down and when the inspiration strikes you, you can just write a long stretch of dialogue and it's right the first time and you don't really need to go back over it? Or are you having to constantly tweak it to make it feel very, very natural, or to have that kind of almost archaic stiltedness in maybe that's the best way I can describe it, of the dialogue and the framing narrative? How are you doing that?
I'll whenever I get to dialogue when I'm writing, I always kind of like I feel relieved because it genuinely feels like I only have to write like half of what I actually end up writing. Because
Mm.
a lot of it does come naturally. It like you're saying, there's different registers. The boys kind of like talking is a lot easier to write. That's probably some of the easiest material to write, to just get stuff on the page. Um, but that said, with any of them, I have to go back after writing it, and just make sure there's no hiccups. So it's not perfect the first time by any means. A lot of times, you'll just come to you'll get to the point a little bit too fast in a scene with dialogue, and you're like, well, the pacing just doesn't feel right on the conversation. Um, like I had this problem a lot more with the sort of like argumentative stuff, particularly with the first time that Soldier meets Celine and they have that conversation, on that by the duck pond. I probably rewrote that like 8 times.
Oh,
It
really?
was it was extremely difficult for me to get it right. And I kept changing what I wanted her to say, and it was extremely difficult. I literally, by the last, every time I come back to it, I'm like, man, this really feels stupid. And until I released the book, like my last like proofreading pass, I was like, man, this really feels dumb. Okay, I'm gonna change this one more time, and then just make sure it doesn't read dumb. And I think it came out okay in the final one, but yeah, sometimes it's more difficult than other times. Like that, that really, like, of everything I've ever written, I had probably the most difficulty with that scene of dialogue for some reason. Um, it was not at all easy to write. Like, contrary to most dialogue for me, dialogue is like the easiest thing for me to write. I hate when I have to sit and, when I'm doing my word quota for the day, it's like, oh, I gotta do a couple thousand words of expository stuff. Ugh, I hate it. I love it when I get to a part where there's a character in there, because then I suddenly have 3,000 words. It's like amazing. I did great today.
Yeah, I guess writing that part with Celine would be really difficult because maybe in part because at least most men, I imagine, have been in, not that exact situation, obviously, but a situation where they're talking to someone they're really attracted to, that they can't make a pass at. Um, getting that right, because it's memorable. Most people, or most guys, will probably remember pretty clearly at least one such situation, and it's pretty easy to get wrong because most will remember it so clearly, like that precise sort of dynamic. So maybe
Right.
that's part of why it felt so difficult to write that, because it would be pretty easy to get wrong, or it'd be immediately apparent if you weren't conveying it correctly. Like if Soldier were responding in ways that just didn't make sense or didn't feel natural at all, or was saying things that didn't feel natural. I mean, I guess in some ways it feels a little bit uncanny valley, because he just starts pulling out like I said, theological or philosophical arguments with her, which I guess some people might do that. I just don't know many of them.
Yeah, it was just a difficulty because he's like, on the one hand, like, contextually, there's no reason for him to beat around the bush with her, because he knows he saw her. He's been obsessed with her since he saw her in the first part of the book, and then he runs into her again. Like, why is there another Union operative here? There's a lot of questions. He needs to get to the bottom of it immediately.
Mm-hmm.
I think, honestly, like, the most difficulty I had with it was I had the, like, I don't know, third wave feminist, like, literary critics in my head, like, a woman wouldn't say this, a woman wouldn't say that. Like, why is she so bitchy? Blah blah blah. And then, like, earlier ones, yeah, she was like way too bitchy, so I had to tone that down. Yeah, it was just extremely difficult. But you're right. Yeah, I've had conversations like that before, with women at college. Not, maybe like you said, not exactly in that philosophical register, but you just trying to come to an understanding, and there's some resistance.
Yeah, yeah. That is one really fun thing about Soldier being the main character or a main character, that he's very capable and actually a lot of the time really confident. A lot of the time, it probably is the sort of person who writes novels. Main characters are oftentimes extremely neurotic, kind of losers. So it is pretty fun reading a book where the main character is not that at all. Soldier is, yeah, like I said, he's really capable. It's pretty fun seeing what he's going to do. And it's fun seeing, sometimes to comedic effect, like how confident he can be.
Yeah, I really wanted that. I was like, I'm gonna go. Like, I don't want this. I don't want this cliche. He's like bumbling. He accidentally like makes it out. With his, with his skin. I wanted him to actually, and I thought it was funny for him to like hate his job so much, but he's actually like quite good at it. I wanted
Hmm.
that to be part of his character, to be like, well, I'm in this situation. I'm gonna mess around a little bit, and I'm gonna get what I need, and successfully. He does make
Yeah,
mistakes,
because
but
the more seasoned intelligence operatives will talk shit about him, but at the same time, like he's he's just some guy who signed up to what he thought would be an interesting job, one a bit more interesting than the other things on offer. But it's not like, I mean, I don't even know how you'd necessarily train for these things, but it's not like he was really a professional before this, and
no.
does pretty well.
Yeah, like I said, I wanted him to be like, I wanted him to be competent. I actually thought that would be funnier than him being, um, like a Jacques Clouseau kind of idiot, slapsticking his way through these situations. Although there is a little bit of that
Mhm.
too, but not very much. He's mostly just knows when to knows when to get serious and lock in, so to speak.
Yeah, how much time do you have to spend thinking about and writing the various ways he gets out of some of the situations he finds himself in? Because it never really feels like there's just this incredible coincidence that saves him at the last second. It almost always when he gets out of a really bad situation, or when he works out a way to achieve one of his goals, it's actually because he's thought about how to do it.
Honestly, I feel like this is one of the magical things about writing. I don't even know. It's genuinely like magic. I don't have like a, I don't know. Like, like it wrote itself sometimes. I'm serious. Like when
Nice, nice.
like it stands out to me is, when he's trying to get Constantine to talk to him for the first time, and he like says some slick stuff to him. It was one of those like dialogue scenes I was telling you about, where it just starts, I start writing and it only feels like I have to write half of it. Um, he comes up, he's like, I wanted to ask you about, um, such and such. And he's able to slip in this wink and nod about Crusaders in a conversation that's completely, it's about something completely different. Right before Constantine's about to shut his door for office hours, he basically forces an audience with him. Um, that was completely, like, it was literally like magic. I don't know.
Whatever you're doing, it does work.
Yeah, thank you.
One
I
thing,
wish I had a better
one
answer.
one
I
one
mean,
thing I
you're a
was
writer.
wanting
You
to
probably
ask
know what
you.
I'm talking about. Like sometimes it just happens.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You read back over something you've written, and you're like, oh, did I write that? Or you feel like patting yourself on the back a bit. You're like, I don't really know how I came up with that, but
Yeah,
good
exactly.
on me. A few weeks in the past.
Yeah.
One thing, because I was reading some of the things you put on Substack, is why do you love Substack so much? Particularly from the latest thing you put up there. Um, you seem like a huge fan of the platform.
Um, I had fun writing that. Uh, it was cathartic. That I did write in like a 30-minute burst. Probably feels like I wrote it in a 30-minute burst too. to read it. I had a lot of like high hopes for Substack. I guess I don't think not necessarily for that I would like gain a huge audience from it or anything. Just as a platform, I thought it was really cool. I liked the like difficult to network sort of newsletter aspect of early Substack, which is what it was when I joined in I think 2022. Um, I'm just disappointed with the direction the platform's gone. I don't know if I'll put any more stories on there or not. Probably not. It's not that there's no point. I like objectively, I have like my like subscriber growth is the most in the last like year. Ironically, it probably just has to do with the new discovery algorithms they have on the site now. Um, I just don't think we don't need like another everything slop app. So uh, I'm just sort of disappointed that the newsletter for fiction or long form essays is basically dead.
Mm, mm. 'Cause how are you thinking about advertising your I mean Fedbook and then any upcoming books as well? Because that's I mean it's not just a problem that you have. You know, it's everyone in fiction, both independent and servilely dependent, has. I mean, even really large publishing houses don't seem to quite know how to advertise books anymore. So without something like Substack, given that X doesn't seem particularly good for hawking books on either, um, how are you thinking about it, or are you just not thinking about it at all? Just focusing on writing things.
Well, no, I'm thinking about it a little bit. I am relieved to have a publisher
Mm,
who's like contractually obligated to do that for me. Um, I'm also, obligated to help out though. Um, I'll say something on Substack, when it comes out. But maybe I'll be more active by then. I don't know. I usually it seems like every 3 to 4 months I'll write something and publish it. So I don't know. Something could come back up and maybe I'll be more active on there. Yeah, and like you said with X, it's all kind of going the same direction. I sort of wonder if we're in like the dark ages of social media now. Like ironically brought about by the velocity of information, not necessarily by fewer users.
mm,
There's just too much. There's too much going on. Nothing sticks. Nobody seems to really like it. The incentives for the content are disgusting. Like doesn't doesn't feel good to be on them. I'm deactivated from it right now, actually. Hopefully for a while. I don't know. It's always difficult to say like, well, I'll just never. If you're a writer, you kind of have to be on social media. It's unfortunate.
mm,
And a lot of the listeners to this will know that. And most of them, or at least we move in some of the same online circles, and a lot of us have like a very limited online presence. Like they're kind of just do it as a means to an end. Like when I set up my Twitter account in 2022, it was pretty much just to. I knew I had a book coming out in about a year, and I was like, I don't want to release it into the vacuum. I want to try and garner at least a little bit of interest, and I did, thankfully. But as far as like practical steps for authors that at least I know work are they actually might involve Substack. Unfortunately, you kind of have to do. You have to publish something with a an online magazine um, that has some degree of renown, even if it's a little bit slight, in order for people to get interested in you as an author. Obviously, like you can't just be a complete unknown. Like for me, I think Fedbook sold pretty well in its first couple of months. Like pretty well for being a complete nobody. Just because of a short story I published in Apocalypse Confidential, which is actually where Will Ballard comes from, and he actually read Fedbook, and I'm pretty sure it was. I was so shocked that he had read Fedbook. By the way, like it was it was amazing to hear. That was one of the most satisfying parts about the whole Farthest Heaven acquisition. It was just hearing that he had read Fedbook a long time ago and really liked it, and like
Mhm.
just happened to hear that I was sitting on a manuscript. Um, I think he read it because I published like kind of it's like a 10,000 word short story in Apocalypse Confidential that actually did really well on their platform, and it came out like 2 months before I released Fedbook. So
Oh, nice.
that's one thing you have to do.
What's their
Sorry, go ahead.
word count on submissions actually? Because I don't remember reading something that felt as long as 10,000 words on Apocalypse Confidential.
Yeah, it's like 5,000. I
Oh,
I
okay.
I, I messaged Dawson Wohler, he was their fiction editor at the time. And I was like, hey, I I really want to submit to this collection. It was their war feature, which I think is still on their site. You can find Once Upon a Time in Nineveh on there. I was like, I really want to submit this, but I have a problem. It's 10,000 words. And he's like, well, I won't necessarily turn it down. Just send it in. We'll see. And then they're like, yeah, we want to run it. Let's do it. I was like, wow, that's great. And I got some nice compliments from people on that one. And then they were so kind to they just like retweeted the book when it came out, So yeah, it went. It was it went. The release was like for me, it was still small, but way, way, way more than I thought it would, and it basically
Mm.
set the tone for my small but like pretty interested following from then till now. So
Mm.
yeah,
And the nice thing about Amazon KDP as well is you take home a fair portion of the sales price as well.
yes, yeah, that is a nice thing. I've always sold Fedbook pretty cheap, except for one time. I raised the price for a period of like 4 or 5 months to $30. Uh,
Generous $30, yeah.
which is crazy. It's so funny. Like when you have it at a reasonable price, like 15, you get like $3. If you have it at 30 though, you get like $12 from it because you clear the print cost by so much that it's you just get a very good royalty from it. I only sold 3 copies at $30 though. It had a dramatic effect on sales.
No, the new KDP meta is to raise the book price so much that it's 1 year of wages. You only need to sell one book a year and you can leave your job.
That's right. I have a friend who just released a book of poetry on KDP that did something like that. It's just it's listed at like $325 or something. It's like 45 pages long.
Yeah,
Jeez.
he's it'll be doing the rounds in a few years on the used and antique ebook market. So
That's right.
yeah, with your new book, actually, the new manuscript, did you write it very differently to Fedbook, or was it about the same, like the same process that served you for Fedbook? You just used for this new one, didn't feel the need to change anything up.
Um, there's some like basic things that are the same. My like word count quotas. I try to stick by those if I'm gonna take the time to sit down. Like I have to write a certain amount. Um, that was the same. I also there was big like hiatuses. If that's the right plural of that. Between sections of it. So I would write like nonstop for weeks, and then I would not write a word for weeks, and then I would get back to it. Um, and I wrote it in it's like three 30,000 ish word parts. Um, between part one and part two, though, I had to do some substantial research, and so a lot of not writing, and that hiatus was just absolutely consumed in pretty in-depth research and note-taking for the section that I was going to undertake. So that was very different. I didn't do a lot of like formal research for Fedbook. Fedbook was more like, if there was like a little area that I wanted a little bit more detail on, I would kind of spend a couple of days learning about it a little bit or tapping into it. With Pierce, there's a protracted section in the middle that is an environment that I don't know at all, and I really tried to familiarize myself as much as possible without leaving the comfort of my own home. Um, in order
Or you're
to
just watching like Ukrainian war drone footage 12 hours a day.
yeah, pretty much. Not exactly, but very close. Yeah. to I hope it doesn't. I won't go into details. I've heard good things about it though. The people who have read it said I did a really good job. So I think that the research paid off. It was really fun. It was cool to tap into like sort of what I was trained in academically. Like a lot of the skills stick, like the 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 conscience of a researcher to like know there's a little bit more work you could do. For instance, I knew that I could email the United States Marine Corps historical archives to find like what are they called? It's not an after action report, but it's basically like a detailed summary from like the company level about everything that the company did at a certain time. I knew I could just email them and get this thing, and I was kind of for some reason sort of trepidated to do so. Then eventually I just did it. So that's like one thing that like studying history is able to like you can do a little bit more. Try to get this information.
I do like it when an author's either their academic background or their job creeps into a book, because I didn't know you'd studied history. I had heard, I can't remember where I heard that you worked in construction, but I did really like in Fedbook. It's not plot relevant at all, but it creeps in just in your descriptions of buildings. It's just so specific. You'll be like noting particular building materials and things like that. In a room, like just the sort of
Yeah.
thing that someone like me will not pay the slightest attention to in a room. But I always really enjoy it when you can see someone's day job emerging in the book and they can't help it. It's just forcing its way in there.
Yeah. Yeah, in Fedbook I was actually very new to that. So it's not as evident as it will be in Pierce, I'll tell you that.
Oh, it's even more strongly in there.
Yeah, let's just say like Pierce is about framing carpentry.
Oh, okay. Okay, more explicit then.
The Pierce refers to nails going into wood.
Oh,
Kind
that's
of.
good. Yeah, yeah. So you're moving from from implicit to just explicit.
No, I've fallen off so hard. All I can do is write autofiction now. So I'm just writing
Oh,
about work.
excellent, excellent. No, you're not allowed to do that unless you're suffering from some sort of personality disorder, living in New York and using prescription drugs. Otherwise,
Right,
autofiction's not allowed.
right. 100%.
Yeah. But I always ask people if there are authors they'd recommend to listeners
Yes.
besides Jack Norman over and over again.
Oh shoot. Uh yeah, definitely Jack Norman. Um Beg Love, Beg Borden is the best short story that I think short stories are a degraded form.
Hmm.
Uh they're
And
not very
really
good.
hard to do well.
Yeah. And Beg Love, Beg Borden, to be honest, is not even really a short story. It's more like a kind of long story. Uh it's
Yep.
like 15,000 words, but it's incredible. Jack Norman's incredibly talented. Um one of the best of the best of like the sort of slash lit Renaissance affiliated authors. Everybody should buy Sleep Capricorn. All the other stories are great. We've talked about Andrew Edwards already. He's definitely lives up to the hype. Crowbar is a difficult read for content and the form of it, but it's hard to like overstate how much I admired his risk taking with writing the novel in that way. I haven't seen like an independent author stylistically innovate in that way at all. I've never seen it, and it like succeeded too. It was just so impressive. Um, it was exciting to read for that reason. Besides the content, which is also exciting. But yeah, Crowbar is great. King of Dogs is also great. And he's a friend. And then another guy, who I think maybe he used to be. I don't want to say he used to be bigger. I don't know, but some people probably know Marty Phillips, for Let Them Look West and Millennium. He's working on a very long
Is that
novel.
the one that he already had like 200,000 words written? Was putting like long sections of poetry into?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes. He's I don't remember
Something insane to do. Something
I
that
don't remember the
is just
final
like
word
from
count.
multiple angles is insane.
Yes. Yeah, it's really good too. I had you know the privilege of reading part one. And it's amazing. It's got the kind of atmosphere that you just sink into. You can tell the amount of effort that's been put into it. It's again like Andrew Edwards. It's amazing to see someone attempt something like that from the independent world, and come away successful. And I think I haven't read part two or part three yet. I don't want to until he's published it. But I think the final thing's like going to be 375,000 words. I'm pretty sure. He's the first indie doorstopper novelist. So,
Yeah,
and I
that
really
is
like
absurd.
him. Yeah, he's a really entertaining writer. He's doing stuff. He's doing stuff in the vein of I don't know. Whenever I read him, I feel the same way as I feel when I read like Philip K. Dick. I think he's a author of with a kindred sort of philosophy and style. Um, and he's really talented. He's a very friendly guy. Trying to think of any other indie authors I really like. And yeah, I don't know. It's a difficult thing because you don't want to be like mean to anyone. I know
Mhm.
maybe some people will be offended that I haven't like said them, but yeah, those three are standouts.
Yeah, no intentional omissions. You just forgot to remember for anyone who's feeling left out.
I forgot Ogden Nesmer.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
he
Frank Gardner,
disappeared
of
anyway,
course.
and Frank Gardner and David Herod.
But thanks very much for coming on. For listeners, pick up a copy of Fedbook. Keep an eye out for Pierced whenever the release date's announced. Follow Farthest Heaven on X, and you'll find out about it there. Any other shilling you want to do before jumping off?
Um, not really. I've basically just said I don't really respect the short story as a form, but if you liked Fedbook and you want more stuff like that before you read Pierce, yeah, feel free to check out my Substack, Nineveh 20XX. Uh, there's plenty of short stories on there. I'm hoping to maybe one day get it compiled. So I think there is some quality, but it's one of those things like, you know, kind of talked about it earlier. Would I buy that? I don't know. So I'm not sure if I'll put it together. It'd be definitely a vanity project if I did. I did just finish a hard sci-fi novella. Um, I've
Oh, cool.
I've got an editor looking at it from a press some people know. Um, and maybe something will come of that. We shall
Penguin.
see in the next few months. No,
Might
not
have heard of it.
Penguin Random House tour. No, no, just Unreal Press. Rhyme Henry Davis. We're gonna
Oh,
get after
excellent.
it. If he likes it, he has to tell me. He has to tell me if he likes it first. He might hate it. We'll find out.
Hmm. Yeah. You can do a competing book launch in Latvia.
That's right. If I had read Carbon Pages, I might have said Daniel Gavlovsky for my indie author, but I haven't read it yet, so I don't know. But
Yeah, I'm meaning to read that one. That is on my to read list.
it's sitting on my printer. It was just delivered. I'm quite excited. It's like we're talking about. Like indie authors are getting more bold. They're more ambitious. This is a ridiculous independently published book. Hardcover illustrations. I just looked at the typesetting. It's like old style serif font. It looks like it, it looks like a book you'd find in like the basement of a university library. When you open it up, I opened it and I saw Alexander Dugin was like saying something in a play. So we'll find out.
Yeah, I'll put a link to that in the show notes too. I don't know if it's good or not.
Shout out to Unreal.
But look, it probably will be. I'm interested in it at the very least. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So thanks for coming on. Listeners, go out and get a copy of Fedbook. And thanks again for listening. Thanks for coming on. And we'll see you next time.
Thanks so much. Yeah, it's a pleasure.